If you've ever wondered what web security in the world of AI looks like, you've come to the right spot. Hi, my name is Ankita, and like always, we have Kyler Johnson.
Hey, how's it going?
Great, I am excited for this. Welcome to Web Vibes Only, and let's get started. Kyler has created a very helpful demo for us, and he's going to talk through some of the points that we need to keep in mind while working on any app, but focus on web security.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to start off here with the OWASP top 10 from 2025. So, anyone who isn't familiar, there is an organization that we colloquially refer to as OWASP. That stands for Open Worldwide Application Security Project. And basically, this is a nonprofit organization focused entirely on improving software security. So they've got a lot of really helpful stuff on here. But every year, they do a top 10 security vulnerabilities list that they see. So we're going to talk about a couple of things here. A lot of these come up in the wild. They've always been problems. Some of them are proving to be more of a problem. Some of them not as much of a problem as they used to be. And a lot of them just kind of depends on the technologies and the architecture you're using for your app, whether or not they become more or less likely. The reason I wanted to talk about this was because we're getting more and more into the realm of AI. And the things that I'm going to talk about today and demo today are things that I have personally seen come up in AI coded projects. I have seen AI build projects that had these security vulnerabilities that I'm going to show. So AI is obviously an incredible productivity tool. It's nothing short of revolutionary, if we're being honest. And it is also pretty good at resolving security vulnerabilities I'm going to talk about. If you catch them and you ask it specifically to fix it, it can usually fix it. But in most cases, or in a lot of cases, vibe coded projects or AI coded projects can result in these vulnerabilities coming up. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you could be vulnerable. And more importantly, your users could be vulnerable.
Yeah, I think more and more vibe coders need to be aware of that because they seem so easy to be able to code, but there are things you still need to have your fundamentals and your basics right to know what to look for. So this is great. Now more than ever, it is more important to have general awareness about what to look for. So this is great that we are able to share what exactly to look for.
I'm glad you made that comment about general awareness because AI has kind of taken what we are, the way we've thought about this, the way that we've taught web security, and kind of flipped it over on its head. Before, as developers, we used to look at it in terms of, okay, what type of architecture, what kind of technical decisions do I need to make to avoid these security vulnerabilities? But now with AI, we're making less of those types of technical decisions. We are still architecting systems and kind of orchestrating it in that way. But a lot of those smaller technical decisions that can result in these kind of security vulnerabilities coming up are not things that we are handling by hand as much as we used to be.
Yeah.
So now what we need to tell people is when you're testing your application, you need to make sure that you're testing for these things from an end user perspective. And even vibe coders who don't know as much about code, don't have a lot of experience in the code, they can do this. They can look for these types of ways to exploit the application that they've had AI build, and then they can work backwards from that. They can ask AI, hey, I tested in the browser, I saw this type of vulnerability. We need to make sure that this isn't possible. And then you can work with AI to come up with a plan to fix it. But that is something that everyone needs to look at. And now with AI, it's easier to look at that from an end user perspective, from a QA perspective, right? And work
A lot of
backwards.
it is about like what do you feed AI, garbage in, garbage out kind of things. And so if you're able to feed like here's the specific things that I need you to check for related to security, then I think that's super valuable. And it's like we said, like it's valuable to know what to look for.
Absolutely. So I do have a demo so that, just to help people understand how they can test for these things, what kind of things should they look for? And two of these items that we're going to talk about are right here on this uh, OWASP top 10 from 2025. One of them, and this is the most common and it is the most difficult to catch, both for us and for AI. It is broken access control. So, what does that mean? That means one user can manipulate things in such a way to gain access to something else. Let's see. We're going to go over here to this project. And right now I'm logged in as John Doe. As we can see, John Doe this is basically a task list project. So he's got a couple of projects here. If we go to this documentation update project, he's got a couple of to-do items here, right? So this is kind of the detail here. I'm going to grab this ID. I'm going to log out and I'm going to log in as Jane Doe. All right. And she's got one project. I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to grab this ID and I'm going to paste that in there. Now, this was John's project, not Jane's. And because I just captured his ID and composed this URL, it went to the database and retrieved this, even though it wasn't her project. Now, Jane Doe has access to, can see, and manipulate this project, John's project, that isn't hers. This is a more common problem than people realize, and that is why it is the number one problem on the OWASP top 10 for 2025. This has been a long-standing problem. This isn't new, but with AI becoming more and more common, this is the most common issue I see with AI.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because as someone who's new to development might be coding something, they might not even think of validating or screening the scenario. We tend to think of the happy flow and not from a hacker's mindset or what people might try to or how people might try to steal information from your website or try to break access and all the RBAC related processes that need to be set up and thought through about privileges that a user should have and how the order of the hierarchy of that's actually a really big part of software development and architecture. Unless you really prompt AI to do that, they're not even going to think about that. Typically what you would vibe code is build me a Taskify app and not really specify the architecture of it. And so it's built you an app and it looks and feels and acts exactly like it. So you won't think of all the vulnerabilities that it has brought in by not thinking about all the edge cases or how a hacker might think about it.
Exactly. Now, I should say that in this instance, this is a very simple app. It is a CRUD app, essentially. Very, very simple. The most complex piece of this app was simply the Better Auth implementation. And if you've ever worked with Better Auth, that's pretty simple. So this is a very simple app. And when I vibe coded this app, as an example, I actually had to build this security vulnerability into this app because AI got it right. They added the check to make sure that this user on the record before they went to the database and got it. AI got this correct in this app. However, when we're working on the production apps and we're paid to do this for a living, those apps are not this simple, not even close. And it is working in those apps where I have seen this issue come up time and time again, where in those more complicated apps, AI doesn't know that it has to check for ownership of this resource, or it skips it or something like that. And there are ways you can mitigate that, right? Like with your architecture, like you can tell AI that, hey, I want to use Postgres with row level security. And now that ownership of the record is enforced at the database layer, right? So even in the code, if you don't have a check for that in the code, the database will actually fail. So there are ways you can go about mitigating this depending on the technology you're using.
Right.
But this is absolutely something to be aware of. But again, I want to be perfectly clear. AI got this correct in this CRUD app. And in most simple cases, AI can get this correct. But it is something you definitely want to check because I've seen AI mess this up. And on larger projects, more complex things where there's just a lot of resources at play, it's something you have to check because I see AI miss this kind of stuff all the time. The next one I wanted to talk about is number 5 on the OWASP top 10 from 2025, and that is SQL injection. So here we see that Jane Doe has one project. So if she had many, many projects, she could filter them here, right? Well, behind the scenes, what this is doing is it's executing a SQL command. It is this isn't using an ORM. This query isn't using an ORM. It is just using a raw SQL query. And I'm going to trick that SQL query by kind of injecting some SQL to say, hey, I want to return projects where this condition is true. And obviously we can see that this condition is going to be true where 1 is equal to a string of 1, right? It's going to be true for all of these. So what this is actually going to do is return all projects in the database, including projects that she doesn't own. So we can watch this work. And as we see that mobile app development documentation update project. So this happens because we're not parameterizing our SQL queries, right? And this is an attack vector called SQL injection. And again, it's on the OWASP top 20 or top 10 for 2025 because this is still a very common thing. There are a lot of people out there that like to write raw SQL queries. And when they do, it's really easy to just concatenate variables into your SQL string and let it rip. I've seen people do that and say, well, let me get this working first and then I'll come back and, do this the right way. And they never come back to it. They're feeling pressure from a deadline. They get whatever they're working on working and they don't even think about this again. And now you have a security vulnerability in production
Yeah.
that
This
puts your
reminds
user data at
me, sorry,
jeopardy.
this reminds me of little Bobby tables from XKCD. Because if you know how that the query is not being sanitized, you can really do some damaging harm to the production database.
But yeah, hopefully all of our viewers have seen that. If not, if you have not seen that meme or whatever, look up little Bobby tables
Yeah.
and that'll drive this home pretty well.
Yeah.
So again, that's a big issue, having access to see and manipulate data that she doesn't own, right?
Hmm.
The next one I'm going to talk about, and this is the last one I'm going to talk about, but I do see this come up because I see a lot of people wanting, especially vibe coders, wanting to include rich text editors in a lot of the things that they're building. And the problem with rich text editors is that if you're not careful, it will dangerously inject the HTML that you save directly into the DOM. Personally, every time I have used AI to embed a rich text editor, which has been about 4 or 5 times, I did this in response to this. Every time it did not sanitize it. It did not use DOM Purify or some kind of DOM sanitizer or anything. It
Mm.
just directly put it in there. So that
Yeah.
if you're using a rich text editor and you're asking AI to implement this, I don't know if it was the technology I was using. I don't know. I tried Cursor, I tried GitHub Copilot, I tried Gemini, all of them. None of them sanitized the HTML input any time that I tried it.
That's interesting. I think rich text editors are hard to build in any case. Like there's so many edge cases around it that you have to think of. But I'm curious, so what number is it on the OWASP list for
So
2025? Do you have that tab open if you want to show that?
this is a cross-site scripting attack that I'm about to show, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I talk about rich text editors is because where you are most vulnerable to cross-site scripting attacks is when you are taking raw user input and directly inserting it into the DOM. And when you want to do things like when you're using a rich text editor and you want to do things like save the user formatting and then display that in your application in the formatting in which they created it, that's how rich text editors usually work, right?
Mm.
And if you're not sanitizing that user input, they can put some nefarious things in there, right?
Yeah.
Like a script
Yeah.
that executes some JavaScript stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say that browsers have thankfully helped us out a lot here. If you have your default browser server settings and that sort of stuff set up, then and you haven't modified that to get your site to function in some way,
Yeah.
then people can't just write, open script, write some JavaScript to snag your cookies or local storage or all that, right? To get your auth tokens and stuff, because the browser will not execute that code
Yeah.
because it's going to look suspicious to it. So the browsers have helped us out there, but there are a lot of tricks like I'm about to show that will trick that. I
Mm.
also wanted to talk about this one because I do see this as a common problem with AI, even though it's not on the top 10 list this year. I also want to showcase OWASP has a lot of great information about all kind of security vulnerabilities beyond the top 10. So if you go to the OWASP website and you look for cross-site scripting attacks, you can see all kind of information here about when it comes up, what the potential impact or scope would be, and even a bunch of ways to mitigate it. It shows a bunch of related concepts and stuff like that. If you're into web security or cybersecurity space even, or you're just building a product that, where you're going to have user information, this is a really good tool to have to know what to look for and even how to mitigate those problems. This is what I got when I searched for cross-site scripting in OWASP. This is the information it brings up. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to show what that looks like. So I'm just going to modify this description here, and I'm going to put this here, right? So remember, I'd said that we couldn't necessarily just open a script tag and start writing JavaScript to, grab
Yeah.
cookies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what I can do is I can define a function I can do something sneaky that the browser isn't looking for, like give an image with a bad source attribute and then use the on error attribute to execute a JavaScript function that I wrote.
Right.
So we're going to see that work here. So I'll just save these changes. And now,
Yeah.
as you can see, whenever it loads the page, it's alerting, says hacked. And now if I reload the page, every time this page loads, that script is running. It can snag auth tokens from local storage, which you shouldn't be putting them in local storage, but let's be real. Tons of people are doing it.
Yeah.
If
It's
you
easy.
go, it is easy and it solves a lot of auth problems when you put it
Yeah.
in local storage. It makes a
Yeah.
lot of those things easier,
Yeah.
but it leaves you really vulnerable to stuff like this if you're not careful. So, imagine if this was if people could collaborate, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Whoever wrote this code could just be making a server call to
Yeah.
and sending token information, user and token information to their little database they're hosting somewhere,
Yeah.
all from your platform. Definitely something to watch out there. That sums up the security vulnerabilities that I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to leave the viewers with this message. Test your applications for things like this. Don't just go through the happy path. You get in your mind about what you want to build. And when you see it working, you're like, this is great. Definitely challenge your build. You know, uh, there's this meme that comes to mind from QA. You have an order form and it asks the quantity, you know, and QA is over here like, I want to buy 2 rulers, or I want to buy 2 notebooks. I want to buy 66.6 lizards, and I want to buy -1 rulers, and it breaks everything, you know? So
Sets the
it's,
house on fire. Yeah.
yeah.
But
So
that's how QA likes to test things. Hit everything, add everything on there. Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to record this video the most is because people need to be aware of this. They need to be testing this stuff. They need to look at, especially when they're passing IDs for things
Yeah.
into the URL,
Yeah.
which I'm not saying that we shouldn't do. That's how you do those things. But I'm saying that we need to make sure that we're being careful in the way that we are checking for access to resources. We need to make sure that
Yeah.
that check is happening somewhere. And, if you want to, or if anybody wants to take a look at this demo, we'll add the link uh
Yeah,
in the show
we'll
notes.
share the GitHub repo, and I know, Kyler, you have really helpful README for anyone who wants to actually run this and see what's going on. So
That's good stuff. I was actually kind of, in a way, sponsored by a company to build this project and talk about these security vulnerabilities in this way. And what this company does is they're a consultant company, but they also hire people that are looking to get into this field. They have a boot camp, and when you graduate from the boot camp, you can work on real client projects to get really real world experience.
Mm-hmm.
And they deliver great client projects. They've also got a course that they call Tech Innovators, and it's basically about how to leverage tools that we have at our disposal, technology and tools, including AI, to build and sell your own product. And that company sponsored me to create this and go on their platform and kind of talk through these kinds of things to people who don't have a lot of as much experience. So that was the purpose of this project. And if that is something that any our viewers might be interested in taking a look at, please let me know and I can put you in contact. There's a README here. Anybody can clone this. Take a look at the code. If you follow the steps here, the database will be set up for you, seeded with John Doe and Jane Doe login data with their projects that you saw. And I'm giving you the login information here. And if you want to go through these vulnerabilities, there's also a README here called Vulnerabilities MD. And this shows you step by step how to go through these exploits that I talked about in this video. And as always, if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, this is really helpful. And also, if you, as a viewer, facing any vulnerabilities that you're not sure how to handle, or you're not sure what else you should be looking for as you're trying to wipe code a SaaS app and become a millionaire like all of us, I think. um, it's helpful for sure to know what to look for. If you need any guidance in that area, we'll be happy to help. And if you think there are any other vulnerabilities that we should cover in this show, please let us know. And we will be happy to chat about that too.
One last parting note. Before you test live websites, make sure you have permission to do so. Because if you access something that you're not supposed to access and they have record of that, you could be charged as a hacker.
That's true. Yeah.
Before you test things or before you pull a little Bobby tables and you successfully find out that you can delete a user's table, you better have permission to test. So
Yeah.
just a disclaimer.
Unless you're trying to be a hacker. Like, unless you're trying to hack, which hopefully none of our users are. Some websites will have bounties. I think Google and some big companies have bounties for if you can find any sort of a bug or vulnerability in their system, they'll give out you hefty cash. But there are steps to follow for that and not really get your account flagged as a real threat or an active hacker. Don't go into your local hospital's website trying to poke holes and then
Yeah.
bring their system down and then also get flagged as a hacker. Like, if
Yeah.
you are doing this from a point of helping a company, reach out to them and let them know that this is what you're interested in finding for them and things like that.
Yes. The
Yeah, that's a good
security
call out.
the security vulnerabilities I showed you how to exploit today is for research purposes only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a reason why a demo app was created to highlight this, and we didn't go around poking holes in existing websites or softwares.
Exactly. I own this app. I gave myself permission.
Yes. Exactly.
Mark me safe from the FBI.
Yeah, you're not flagging yourself for that. All right, everyone. Until next time, take care. See ya.
Bye.